Spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom. Theorizing on The Legend of Zelda can be pretty annoying sometimes thanks to these books. They single-handedly did irreparable damage to Zelda theorizing, because too many people look up to this as canon information that they can use, when they couldn't be farther from reliable. It's like if in FNAF people use the guides for theories. Context, people usually dismiss them because of their mistakes, they're not trustworthy. And worst of all, these books came up with a timeline that they cannot even keep consistent and that has been used in official websites. But Trubix, what's the problem with the timeline? Well, my boy, that's what we're discussing today, and most importantly, because in the last video I proved, or at least tried to prove, the developers are not the trustiest people on the story. Let me specify, if the developers tell us something, then we should take it with importance. But if what they tell us doesn't make sense, then it should not be recognized, like Miyamoto getting basic facts wrong in that interview. In the end, the games are the most important part. The timeline begins reasonably with Skyward Sword in its first place. Then it continues with Minish Cap. Here we have a few minor details. The first one is that the hero of men doesn't have a hat, so the game implies that Eslo somehow made all Links have hats. Despite how nonsensical that is, it is charming. But in Skyward Sword, he had a hat, so why did this specific hero not have a hat? Okay, this is just a dumb minor detail. The other detail is that Zelda's power in this game originates from the Minish, while in Skyward Sword it originated from her godly blood. But you could say that this power just added up to what she already had. Then Four Swords. Even if it's left unexplained how Vaati survived but Minish Cap, but that's from the fault of Capcom. Then we have for Ocarina of Time. Alright, Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf's attacks, time travel, every girl has a crush on Link, Link kicks Ganondorf's ass and Zelda sends him back to another timeline to relive his childhood. And as we see in the credits, these two timelines coexist at the same time. And of course we see this in the timeline, adult timeline and child timeline. But wait, what's that? Downfall timeline? What? So, there's a secret third timeline, which existence is not hinted anywhere, where Link was defeated by Ganondorf and he obtained the Triforce, the complete one. And this leads to A Link to the Past? So wouldn't this mean that there are infinite timelines for each time Link loses a fight? This just opens an unnecessary can of worms. Oh, but Trubix, it is because of time travel. No, it isn't. Shake explains that the time travel you do with the Master Sword is like a river. You travel in the same timeline. And how is the time travel in the end related to this? The best theory I heard claims that because there is a timeline where Link wins, and one where the fight doesn't happen, then there must be one where Link loses, but again, this is pure headcanon. And should a timeline where the battle doesn't get resolved exist too? Oh, it is because of the Triforce and the three pieces. Okay, but why? That is a pure guess. I also heard that originally he was meant to lose, and the wish in A Link to the Past was what makes him win. But aside from the fact that that has nothing to back it up, and I mean the wish Link makes just fixes the current world, there's nothing that says that it fixes the past too. But there are also a few problems with that we'll see later, but yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Okay, but this isn't all. Because one thing is for the rules to be weird, but the thing that really makes this impossible is that Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past don't fit together at all. I know originally Ocarina of Time was supposed to be a prequel to A Link to the Past, but if the game deviates too much from then I'm sorry. For example, I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw a theory that said that at some point Bloodborne was going to have a connection to Demon Souls in the DLC, I think. Of course that didn't happen, just because it was the intention at some point. Now, I could use the manuals of A Link to the Past to prove this easily, but instead I'll use only the game to prove it, specifically the Game Boy Advance version because it is better translated. First, we know that the sages of the past were all Hylian because the maidens now are Hylian. The developers try to cop out in an interview by saying that they are their spiritual successors, but you can't fool me. The game implies very heavily that they are blood descendants, and a Goron like Darunia or a Kokiri like Zarya wouldn't end up like Hylians. But most importantly, the game states that the Hylian army defended the sages, but in Ocarina of Time the sages act more like spirits, not having physical forms anymore. They wouldn't need to be protected like that. Then we learned that the knowledge of the location of the Sacred Realm was lost to time, but Ganondorf rediscovered it but couldn't find a way out. This straight up conflicts with Ocarina of Time too. Knowledge of the Sacred Realm wasn't lost, Zelda knew it, the Deku Tree knew it, hell even Ganondorf didn't stumble with it by accident, he knew how to enter. And he ruled Hyrule for 7 years, so he certainly knew how to get out. There's also a prophecy about the Triforce. This would conflict with the prophecy of the Hero of Time. I mean poor Ganon, they had dozens of prophecies for each time he wins.
How many of those have you got?
50. I can do this all night.
Never fear, flame is quiver in fear, for I no, don't, mommy, evildoers, prepare to die. Avast ye! I'm gonna die. Now we have him. There's 37 more of me, asshole! Yeah!
The way Hyrule Historia connects them is weird too. After Link is defeated, Ganondorf gets the Triforce and becomes Ganon, and Zelda and the sages trapped him in the Sacred Realm. Wasn't Zelda trapped in a crystal? Why did Ganon even let her leave after taking the Triforce? And despite the fact that he left the Dark World when he obtained the Triforce of Power, now he doesn't remember the way out? Is he retarded? The Triforce of Wisdom wasn't helping very much. Also, in Ocarina of Time we see how there are no guards anywhere in the future, and they already weren't very competent, so how did Zelda amass an army strong enough to fight the Demon Tribe? Also, in Ocarina of Time we see how Link has to weaken Ganon a lot for the sages to trap him in a place further than the realm of the dead. I understand that they didn't trap him here in that place, but couldn't he, defend himself? Did he left and win? What's going on? Even on a thematic level this is absurd. Ganon defeats the hero and wins, and somehow they still survive? In Tears of the Kingdom something similar happens, but Rauru has to sacrifice his very powerful life, and it is implied that the littlest disturbance could make the seal accelerate its end. And Rauru already had shown that his powers could seal evil, as we see with the shrines. And with all of this, his power still slipped out as Calamity Ganon. But here Ganon obtains the power of a god and they just throw him away, no problem. In the original story there was no way to beat Ganon, so they just sealed the exits to the Dark World. They didn't send him there, they just stopped him from escaping the former Sacred Realm. So, Ocarina of Time preceding A Link to the Past doesn't make any sense. Let's continue. The adult timeline is perfectly okay, no problems whatsoever. The Downfall timeline after that nonsensical beginning continues very well. Link's Awakening and the Oracle games are a bit iffy, but it's alright. It works either way. I personally think it makes more sense for Link's Awakening to come after, because after 2 Ganon attacks, Link will go to train like we see in the ending, and then the game happens when he is coming back, but whatever. It is weird that a game like Triforce Heroes is canon. It's so inconsequential that it kinda bothers me. And it ends with Zelda 1 and 2. It isn't explained how Ganon came back, but they could always make a game that explains it, so whatever. The child timeline is also reasonable, until its end. Four Swords Adventures is considered to be a weird story, and that's because of this fucking timeline. The game clearly states that times have been peaceful since Four Swords. Yeah, peaceful my balls, with the Civil War and the Twilight Invasion. It also heavily implies that Link and Zelda are the same from Four Swords. It's so clearly supposed to be a direct sequel to Four Swords. So, why did they place it here? Well, because throughout the game it is revealed that the villain is Ganondorf. In fact, this seems to be his origin, since he was kicked out of the Gerudo tribe and no one seems to know anything bad from him. But of course this conflicts with Ocarina of Time. So they say this Ganondorf is a reincarnation of Twilight Princess Ganondorf. I cannot tell you how much I hate this. With Ganondorf obtaining a magical trident and becoming a blue boar while talking with a British vocabulary, this is clearly supposed to be a Link to the Past Ganon. This game works miles better than Ocarina of Time as a prequel to A Link to the Past. If you want to know more, I recommend watching Nintendo Black Crisis video. I don't agree with the Minish Cap split, but it's a good video. Did you watch it or did you ignore me? Anyway, there's another reason Four Swords Adventures works better as a prequel. We never see what Twin Roba are doing, and then ages later they appear in the Oracle games to revive their son. They don't recognize Link from the Hero of Time. It seems this is the first time they see him. If these games follow with Ocarina of Time, then it will mean Ganon resurrected them and they should know Link, but they don't. After all these books, Breath of the Wild came out and they claimed it happens at the end of the timeline. It's even listed outside of it, so it's impossible to know which one. Then Tears of the Kingdom came out and made things even worse because Zelda time travels to the foundation of Hyrule. And although it makes perfect sense for this to happen after Skyward Sword, it conflicts with the lore of Ocarina of Time. Why are there two Ganondorfs and if one is under the castle? Why wasn't he discovered when Ganondorf destroyed Hyrule Castle? And why do the Rito exist? Because of this, many argue that Rauru just refounded Hyrule after it fell down in one of the timelines. But there are a couple of issues with this. First is that it sounds very convenient that Rauru just happened to call this land the same as the other one. And second, was there no record of a previous Hyrule? No ruins, no nothing? And why is Ganondorf back? He was dead in Twilight Princess and in Wind Waker, and he lost his mind and became fully Ganon in the Downfall one. As I've proven, Four Swords Adventures Ganondorf isn't a reincarnation, and in Spirit Tracks there was another Demon King. Reincarnation is an unconfirmed concept in Zelda because you never know if characters are just reincarnating or if they're just references. So it isn't impossible, but I don't know, it would be weird for a main character like Ganon. Then there are things that are too difficult to explain, like the god statues. In none of the other games do they appear, but now they suddenly exist again. Same for the springs, and Hylia is very referenced, despite the only thing you had was a lake in the other games. You also require the timelines to converge because of some parts. And again, all the reasonable theories I've seen are pretty headcanon-y. So, some just say that the other games were just legends and that this is a reboot. However, I despise dream theories and alike, so let's find another solution. Ocarina of Time, A Link to the Past and Tears of the Kingdom all conflict with each other. They show us similar ideas and concepts but execute them in completely different ways. Another interesting detail to notice is that the games related to this all have rather similar but different stories related to the Sky People. Twilight Princess also had a different origin for the Master Sword, but Tears of the Kingdom shares it with Skyward Sword. Also, the hero's outfit seems to have always different origins. In Skyward Sword it is the design of the knights, in Ocarina of Time it is a Kokiri outfit and then they reutilize it to reference the Hero of Time. And in Minish Cap, it is the outfit of the Hero of Men plus the hat Eslo gives Link. So, the solution is simple. We split them. Here represent you my idea for the ideal timeline, divided in 3 different stories that share elements but are different. The creation of the world happens mostly the same in the 3, with Din, Nehru and Farore and the Triforce. Here events happen differently. In the first and second timeline the demon tribe appears, but only in the third one we know about the Bringer of Demise. He could technically exist in the other 2, but we don't know. In the second one, whatever happens is completely unknown. We don't know if Hylia and Demise existed, we don't know if the hero existed, it is blank and you could fill it with information in the other 2. In Timeline 1, the demon tribe threatened to destroy everything, but when the Minish descended from the sky and united with a hero and a princess, they sealed away all of them. In Timeline 3, the demons were defeated by Hylia and after Skyward Sword their leader was completely eradicated. In Tears of the Kingdom, the Zonai descended from the sky, sealed demons away with the shrines and founded Hyrule. In Timeline 2, we know there was a civilization that founded Hyrule with the Hylians and ascended to the sky, although it's not clear if they ascended or they just came back. The point is, in the 3 timelines we have examples of species close to the gods and responsible for Hyrule's founding, and in 2 of these they are responsible for the light powers of the royal family, in Minish Cap with the Light Force and the Zonai with Rauru's union with Sonia. Ganondorf is always the same man, just with different contexts, but he always tries some conflict only to realize he is failing and take a different direction that leads him to a power to conquer everything. After gaining this power, the good guys cannot defeat him, so instead they seal him away, waiting for the day someone will have the power to finish his life. And 2 of these events are called the Imprisoning War. In Timelines 2 and 3 we see Zelda being wary of Ganondorf and the king dismissing it. In all timelines Ganon is sealed away by the sages, and in Timelines 2 and 3 these groups are very similar. In Timelines 1 and 3 the demon tribe was lost but were freed by someone with lust for power. In Timelines 1 and 2, Ganondorf becomes a giant boar when he unlocks the power of the Triforce. And I could continue, but I think it's clear. These events are rather similar, like legends being told differently and having different versions. This interpretation also keeps the games consistent. In Timeline 3, Hylia is very well known in Hyrule. Her statues remain, while in the other 2 there is no mention of her outside of the name of a lake. There is also the fact that Hylia said the Triforce had to be hidden so that no mortals would know about it. In Timeline 3, they hid it extremely well because despite it being referenced everywhere, no one knows of its existence. And no, Zelda doesn't have it. It's been shown that the mark can mean more things than one. The mark just appears because it is Hylia's mark. Meanwhile, in the other 2 timelines, there are literal wars for the Triforce. There's also the Master Sword. Fi never gives a hint of, well, existing in Timelines 1 and 2. In Timeline 2 you kind of can see that the sword is alive on some capacity, but it doesn't seem to care about Link anyway, it just wants to slay demons. In Timeline 3, however, Fi is much more involved, telling Zelda what she has to do, traveling to the past Zelda went to execute the plan, and talking to Zelda in the ending even if there was no reason to, and also talking to Link a few times. Lastly, I would like to debunk a little theory that states that in Skyward Sword there is a timeline split. This is because despite killing Demise in the present, we kill him in the past as well, making it impossible to kill him in the present. However, even though Fi claims his eradication, his consciousness is sealed in the Master Sword, so he wasn't completely destroyed. So it is possible that his malice and power simply reverted back into the imprisoned. In fact, this could imply that Hylia actually killed him but had to place seals on his power. Then, the imprisoned was defeated by the Triforce and Demise was truly exterminated. I mean, if the Master Sword could kill him completely, why was the Triforce even necessary? So Skyward Sword wasn't a split, it was a loop like the one we see in Tears of the Kingdom. Another counter-argument. In Breath of the Wild we hear tales from Ruto of Ocarina of Time, and in Zelda 2 the towns have names of the sages in Ocarina of Time. This is easily fixed though. These people existed in different contexts. Just like Ganondorf always exists but his conflicts happen differently, Ruto existed in Timeline 3 and the sages of Ocarina of Time existed in Timeline 1. They just had different lives. In the end, although some people claim this series was just about individual titles, the truth is Nintendo always made games that were connected. The first 4 games were all easily connected. The games Capcom made were all also made with A Link to the Past in mind, and that's why they fit. In fact, Four Swords Adventures originally was more explicitly a prequel to A Link to the Past, but Miyamoto told them to tone down and focus more on the gameplay. And A Link Between Worlds was literally called A Link to the Past 2 in Japan. Meanwhile, in Ocarina of Time they decided to take liberties and make something inspired in the past of A Link to the Past instead of a literal prequel. And the games that follow all are sequels to Ocarina of Time specifically, or sequels to Ocarina of Time sequels. Finally, in Skyward Sword they wanted to show the origin of the Master Sword and that's why they went to the past. But in a way, this game was also their chance to start again, to have a new beginning. And in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom it seems is the only game that they took into consideration. This is what I believe is the ideal canon. The version I think is the most satisfying and less messy. Of course, this means we can't connect all games in a single timeline, but I'll gladly take that instead of a nonsensical mess that screws the game stories. I know, of course, some of the things here go against the things that the developer said, but let me remind you that Aonuma once said that the hero of Twilight wasn't related to the hero of Time, even if the game heavily hints that he is. But regardless, you, two people who will comment on this video, what are your thoughts? Do you agree with me or do you have your own ideas? I would love to hear them and debate them, so comment if you would like. As for me, I hope you enjoyed it, check out some of my other stuff and see you later.